Well, welcome. Thank you for joining us for the Elders Climate Action Electrify Your Life workshop on heat pumps. Today, we're going to be focused on all types of heat pumps for heating water, space heating and cooling, and drying clothes. It's our goal that when you leave here today, you will know so much more about heat pumps, being able to think about what is right for you, and more importantly, being able to speak with all the contractors that you and others that you'll be talking to. I'm Robert White here. I'm a volunteer with Elders Climate Action and so thankful that I've been given the opportunity to host today's call. I'm joined by our renowned speaker, Sean Armstrong from Redwood Energy, and from Elders Climate Action folks from all over the country. We have facilitators for our breakout groups from Massachusetts, New York, Minnesota, Oregon, Maryland, and California. We have Catherine, Marianne, Ken, Mark, Pam, Jen, Seth, Roger, Mike, Todd, and Pete Marsh and myself as facilitators. You'll be pleased to know that all of us are personally well on our way to the electrification journey in our own homes, having faced all the issues that come up, and some of us have even removed our natural gas meter, as my family has been lucky enough to do. All of us thank you for the opportunity to show how electrification is the most immediate, personal way we believe to respond to the climate crisis. We believe electrification to be the best way to advocate for the planet by building a strong connection to what the Earth is calling for. There are so many reasons for direct engagement and helping each other, a deeper understanding of how electrification will help heal the Earth, a better understanding of heat pump options, how to find and hire contractors, and hopefully a heightened ability to explain electrification to others. This is a great way to build community. This is the second of 4 seminars on electrification offered by Elders Climate Action, providing hands-on ideas and recommendations. After today's workshop, all registrants will receive a copy of the slides, mine and Sean's, a link to the video recording on YouTube, a copy of the chat, and a follow-up list of resources. You will also receive a written reply to each of the questions raised by you in the chat and in the breakouts. We won't be answering questions during the presentation, but we will try to answer them in the breakouts. For those of you new to Elders Climate Action, we are grandparents, great uncles, great aunts, and everyday folks who are determined to do all we can to leave a livable planet for future generations and all life. Our programs, communications, and chapters are focused on engaging elders in solving the climate crisis. At Elders Climate Action, we are elder-centered and volunteer-driven, seeking to inform, inspire, and engage older generations to take action on the climate crisis at the local, state, and federal levels. After a little bit of context setting, which I'm doing now, a gentleman by the name of Roger Luckman from Massachusetts will ask you questions in a survey about where you find yourself on your electrification journey, and in order to help us for the breakout rooms and help us moving forward. We will then hear from our guest, Sean Armstrong, who I will introduce shortly. Roughly on the hour, we will have a 20-minute or so breakout session with facilitators where we will begin to give you detailed possibilities and help you learn how to electrify your home. We won't have all the answers, but we will get you started on your path and on your journey. We want to be able to help you see how systems work, and so that you might be able to ask the right questions. And I've said this before, and I'm going to emphasize it again. There are going to be plenty of companies and contractors that will be coming to your door with answers. The more that you know ahead of time, the better it will be for you. And at the end of the seminar, we'll describe our next seminars and invite you to attend. The context is we are out of time. Doing something later is too late. By eliminating the CO2 emissions from your home, you're doing something to impact the planet and to reduce carbon dioxide emissions. According to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the world faces unavoidable, multiple, worsening climate hazards over the next 2 decades, with global warming of 1.5 degrees Celsius within 6 years or sooner. Hitting this warming level will result in severe, irreversible impacts. There's alarming information coming from corporations that their future existence is in jeopardy. Small businesses are concerned. Residents across the world are concerned about their safety from flooding, fires, droughts, and other climate conditions. Today, it's our intention to focus on 3 of the big 4 fossil fuel appliances you have in your home: your gas or oil water heater, your gas or oil furnace, and your gas dryer if you have one. These are the appliances that are typically powered by fossil fuel in U.S. homes and have the biggest impact on your health and the planet's health. The good news is there are high quality, modern, efficient options available for all of them, and that's what Sean will be talking about. All 3, the furnace, the water heater, and the dryer, can be replaced by a heat pump. And I think everyone knows what a heat pump is. You have one in your home now. It's called a refrigerator. The heat pump moves heat, and Sean will go into more detail about that. But we are kind of lucky because our fossil fuel equipment will fail. Oil and gas water heater, typically the first thing to go, has a life cycle of about 6 to 15 years if you're lucky. And the plan today is to help you plan and know more so that you'll be ready when the time comes. And if you really wanted to, you could replace all your fossil fuel equipment now. You have an opportunity to plan ahead, and then when ready, plug in. And we'll go into some detail about that here and on future seminars. One of the questions we get asked a lot: where are my rebates? And when we were preparing this chart about 2 weeks ago, only 2 states had gotten the money available from the Inflation Reduction Act. As of now, Arizona, New Mexico, Wisconsin, and New York have all been allocated money for the Inflation Reduction Act, and they've started to make it available to the residents of their states. Another 8 states have been told that the money is coming. The ones in the chart that are in orange, those states have been told the money is coming. My state, California, is going to be allocating it sometime in the next few months. And if you keep track, we've given you the link in the chat, or we will, of how to keep up to date with where this is happening. The last thing I'm going to talk about is just to give you kind of an overview of something for you to be thinking about, that weather conditions vary state by state. And I know Sean will be talking about that. If you look at the top of the chart, you'll see that Minnesota in purple and part of Maine in purple. Well, their conditions are drastically different than the areas in red, parts of Arizona and parts of Texas and Florida. And Sean will be talking about, and we hear this a lot, well, heat pumps work in all climates, and Sean will be talking about that. This chart, by the way, is what building departments use across the country when they set their building codes. It's the 2012 International Energy Conservation Code, providing energy code guidance. It includes measures to improve the building envelope as well, HVAC systems, and so on. You don't need to know everything about this, but what I want to do is lay the groundwork for this is something to be aware of, and to ask the questions of your contractor. Is the equipment they propose appropriate for your jurisdiction? So now Roger Luckman is going to do a survey. And Roger, are you there?
Yes, I'm right here, Robert.
Go for it.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. So we have a brief survey just to learn a little bit about where you stand in your electrification journey and what you're most interested in learning about. So I just am going to put the link in the chat for you guys, and it should be coming up shortly. And I'll ask everybody to just jump onto that link. You'll see a form with a few questions. Click the boxes that seem most appropriate for you. And if you have a question or something, we'll be sitting here to answer them. And then when you come back, we'll show everybody what the results are. So get to work.
And while we're waiting, one thing I could say is that if you have questions now, feel free to put them in the chat. We won't be able to answer your heat pump questions in the chat today. We'll answer some, but not all of them. But it'll give us a good start to understand what some of the questions are. And then we'll take those chat questions and we will answer them in the follow-up information that we send out to you.
I felt so bad putting down I'm not interested in a plan. I was like, I'm gonna put in bad data in here, but I got it handled. I'm doing fine. I electrified back in 2017. Is it all right if I share my screen now?
Yeah, I'll stop sharing.
There's nothing, the chat's not working.
I was able to go to the chat, and
It is working for most of us, I think.
It
just
is.
at the very bottom, there's a link there that then has a few questions. Well,
There's nothing here.
I'm sorry. If it's okay, I'm gonna get into the presentation, and you guys can have most of the people be able to do the survey.
Okay.
Yeah, there's something called survey link if you're looking for it near the bottom of the chat. Yeah. If you scroll through it, if you can scroll through it.
I don't see any, it doesn't
Okay.
work either.
Can you put it in the chat again?
Yeah, I can. We do have responses from just about everybody here. Want me to do that after the presentation to bring that up?
Do it quickly now. Sean's about ready to go, but I think you've got
She
Yeah.
might be looking in the Q&A rather than the chat.
Well, and there's one good question here. Camille Road, you're asking, what's the difference between a heat pump water heater and a tankless water heater, and which is considered the more efficient solution? So a tankless, whether it's burning gas at say 90 to 96% efficiency, or if it's burning electricity essentially, just like a toaster element at 92 to 96% efficiency, if you're using a heat pump, since you're collecting ambient heat from the environment, be it from the air or from the ground or sometimes from water, I'll show you from milk. That's the early heat pumps for chilling milk. That collects an extra 2 to 5, sometimes 10 units of energy from the environment. Heat pumps for swimming pools might be 10 units of energy from the environment, just 1 unit of energy operating the heat pump. So that's the most efficient is definitely a heat pump water heater, and the ones that are in people's homes are usually, they collect about 2.5 units of energy to 4 units of energy for every 1 unit that you use to operate it.
Okay, Roger, go ahead and put.
Yeah, so Sean, if you can stop share, then I can show the results here.
Yeah, what do we got?
Okay, all right, so let me just bring this results up here. Should be coming up shortly. And here we go. Okay, so we had 77 responses. Okay, I'll wait for that. That should be coming up to you right now. Yeah, there we go. And it looks like we have most folks who were living in a single family home, a few folks in an apartment, and some condo owners and townhouse owners out there, but about 80% of us in single family homes. And about the majority of us, 87%, we own our own place, and owning your own place makes it a little bit easier to get on the electrification journey. When you rent, there's some challenges dealing with landlords and the people who own your place, but there are options out there for sure to make progress. So how about where we stand with heat pumps for heating and cooling? You can see that we've got about 12 of us who have that now. And of course, not surprising, folks on this call, about 30 folks are planning to get one, and most everybody else is thinking about it. Heat pump water heaters, a little bit less popular. About 10 of us have them now, and a bunch planning. And fewer are actually planning to get one. They're thinking about it. So maybe by the end of today's presentation, we'll move from thinking to planning, hopefully. Induction stoves, the most popular here with 20 of us, and a bunch more are planning to get one soon, and the rest thinking about that. And the heat pump clothes dryer, least popular and maybe kind of newest on the scene, not surprising. And some folks planning to get one for sure. So in terms of what people are interested in, let's see. So preparing a plan for electrifying everything. We have folks somewhat interested in that, and that's really what a lot of people are interested in on this call. And then we've got selecting a contractor, a lot of interest in that too. That's the orange bar. And coming up here to purchasing clean electricity, We have a few folks interested in that, but fewer than the specific issues related to heat pumps, not surprising. Financing, money is always, money talks, and that's kind of where the action is, and people really want to learn how they can fund what they're going to want to do. And then a lot of people really interested in details, selecting appliances. So wide range of interests here, but a lot of focus on heat pumps, and I think we're ready to go.
Well, thank you, Roger. That's really good information and helps us moving forward. I need to introduce Sean Armstrong because he's such a great speaker and such a good guy to work with. He's a renowned electrification authority. He will now present the many electrification options for installing heat pumps in your home, how to maximize benefits, how to minimize installation, and the pitfalls to avoid. Sean is managing principal of Redwood Energy. His firm was the designer of fully half of all the electric residents built in California and 1/4 of the zero net energy residents built in North America between 2011 and 2020. On his website, which we'll put in the chat, he has a number of pocket guides to electrification. And besides everything else, he's just a really generous, very generous person to work with. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sean. Sean, go for it.
Hello, hello. Hey folks. I realized I didn't check my volume setting, and sometimes Zoom, yeah, look at that. Okay, I've turned up my volume setting so it's correct now. So I'm gonna give a talk on heat pumps. It might go quickly. So there's a whole book that's for free on our website, and we'll go into a link in the chat, but at redwoodenergy.net, we have publications, and you can just read the book on how to retrofit your house. It's for free. It's reasonably well written, lots of nice big pictures. And say like, hi, who I am. Since 1995, I've been studying at a demonstration house at the university that's near me, a few miles away. I worked briefly as a high school science teacher. I enjoy teaching like this. I enjoy questions. You're welcome to ask questions. I'll try to answer them, just like in school, if you like it. But in 2005, I spent 6 years working for a development company and a general contractor, and I learned how to design and build apartment complexes for low-income households. So we learned that the cheapest way to build and own was all electric with 100% solar offset. So here, this is a picture of 26 homes for low-income seniors, and this was the first successful development in the country back in 2014 of how to do all electric 100% solar powered housing. Similarly, the first apartment complex that did that was also for low-income seniors. Both these projects I got to lead the design of. So in 2011, I started as a consultant, and since then I've worked on about 400 apartment complexes. On the bottom here, this is a zero net energy, meaning 100% solar offset over the year. You make the same amount of electricity you consume in a year as you produce in a year, not at the same moment. And we have a 9-story tall solar wall facing the Washington, D.C. Beltway. And this is also for low-income seniors, the housing authority in Montgomery County. So a story. I think it's easy to understand heat pumps if you start at the beginning. And in the beginning, in about 1850, there was a person who was cleaning the typeset for a printing press. And the ether got on his hands a lot. And it gets really cold because ether boils on your hand, and it takes all the heat out of your hand then through this boiling process. It turns to vapor, it's boiling. So he decided, like, there's a whole bunch of, what does this mean to me? Maybe I could, if I sort of bottled this magic, I could make ice. And that was a big deal in Australia. Immediately, they made the first ice machine where he's essentially boiling the ether and chilling the water through a like heat exchanger, basically, but chilling water to make ice. And then he collected the ether and used it over and over again, turned it back into a liquid, and then boiled it again and turned it back into a liquid and kept it in a closed loop so he didn't waste it, and started making ice. And the ice was used for beer. Beer is really the very origin of ice making and heat pumps in general. This idea of a heat pump is that you're pulling the heat out and you're using a compressor, which is a kind of pump. So on the left-hand side, you can see Anheuser-Busch. They were making the biggest of the ice machines. And you can see here during World War I, 2 women delivering ice. So this is the first heat pumps were to make ice. The second heat pumps were made to dehumidify printing presses, like the big buildings with so much moisture. And I wanted you to see that people wanted the services like refrigerators, which Robert mentioned was one of the smallest of the first ice makers, essentially. Usually you had ice delivered to your insulated box. And then they made a heat pump that sat on top of it, and you could make the ice essentially in the ice box on top, and it would chill the whole machine. So people started installing small microgrids around the nation, and there were 1 million of them. A microgrid meaning they had batteries, so they had electricity in the evening to run the refrigerator, run fans, run pumps for water, etc., lights. So 1 million households in the United States had batteries running on wind turbines, gas generators, and of course today, solar panels. In order to get these kinds of services, particularly refrigeration, we had to electrify the country, and 60% of the country's landmass didn't have electricity. Differently put, 9 out of 10 rural households, like what I grew up in, I had, one of those party line telephones, So in rural America, the government gave loans, which were then turned into grants if people strung their own power poles. And that is how our nation electrified most of the country, is through rural electric co-ops, through a government agency that was retired in 1959. This allowed people to get these benefits. On the left-hand side, this is Carrier, which is still an air conditioner heat pump company. Carrier, it was a real person, and he learned in Brooklyn, New York, from the ice-making machines for the breweries. He learned how to make heat pumps, and he shrunk it down, and this is the first air conditioner ever in someone's office. It's in New Jersey, back in 1933. And here you can see an ad from the 1950s, just at the very beginning, the luxury of having your own air conditioner inside your house. So the electric utilities trying to sell clean energy, which was nuclear power in the 1950s. They hired Ronald Reagan, who was a retired actor at that point in 1953, and he led the General Electric Theater, Ronald Reagan's General Electric Theater, and it was the #1 show in the country. And that is how he learned how to become the great communicator, not from being a theater person, but being put on a train and having to open up every nuclear power plant in the whole country for about 10 years and just talk with people and like have a ribbon cutting, talking about clean energy. And this is his demonstration mansion. I learned at a demonstration house. They set up his demonstration mansion with a heated swimming pool and heat pumps inside to heat and cool it, as well as like new fancy lighting. And he'd show his family on long infomercials. They'd record this, and he'd see his kids Patty, and he'd talk about his electric servants that he had, all these new fancy appliances in the kitchen. And all of that was really a media campaign to make it so that in 1962, the National Electrical Code required all houses have enough power delivered to them for an all-electric home with heat pumps. And that's 100 amps is the total that you need in order to pull off an all-electric home, up to about 3,600 square feet. And keep in mind, in 1962, people were building 1,200 square foot homes on average, 1,400 square foot homes. People didn't, 100 amps is a lot of electricity for a small house like that. And it's enough for a 3,600 square foot house. I'm just going to quickly look at the chat and see, are there any urgent questions that people have? Oh, and Weber, you're liking this history? Great. I think it really helps get people in the mood. And yay for beer, absolutely. Okay, so these are the first air conditioner heat pumps that you'd recognize. It was called the Spam can on the left-hand side and the round one on the right-hand side in the 70s. And so these are reversible air conditioners. So that means it is the exact same technology. And in air conditioning mode, you are boiling the liquid inside, which pulls the heat in. Remember how cold it makes your hand? So you're chilling as you boil the ether, so to speak, and you pull that gas outside through a little tube into this box, which has a fan, and the fan is blowing out the heat away from off the ether to let it then turn back into a liquid. So this is a process for air conditioning, and you can just turn it in reverse with the exact same stuff. You just make it so that the liquid is on the outside boiling and essentially pulling heat into the vapor, and it's being brought inside, and it's being squished back into a liquid and releasing the heat inside your house. It's the exact same thing, just goes back and forth. Inside, this is what it looks like. Here's this big fan. The heat pump is mostly a fan. That does almost all the work. But then this capsule, this black thing on the side, this is where it turns from liquid to gas or from gas to liquid. And then there's some other stuff, some wires and things. But basically it's this fan, it's this compressor. And all of these little coils here, that is where this ether, this refrigerant they call it today, that is where it is going through these copper pipes and releasing the heat or absorbing heat. It's the same surface that's used in either direction for heating or for cooling. It either gets rid of the heat there or it is absorbing the heat from the outside air. I'm going to go through every kind of heat pump you're interested in, by the way, hydronic, etc. And yes, they can be installed in brick buildings, absolutely. Very commonly done all over the East Coast. So this is like a pretty picture. I just try to paint it with my words, saying like, you can either absorb heat inside. This is this red cloud. You can either, or you can release heat inside. The same thing on the outside. It's the property of this ether boiling at a low temperature. Usually they boil at -30 Fahrenheit, -50 Fahrenheit, -110 Fahrenheit. So even if the air outside is cold, like 10 degrees zero, 10 degrees below zero, I mean, really, really cold, like what I grew up with in rural Wisconsin, this liquid still boils at lower temperatures than that, and therefore they still work. So most heat pumps work well to -30 Fahrenheit if they're using the air as the heat resource. I mentioned milk. So this is now 1978, 2 years after I'm born, and these are how chillers are being used. Chillers are kind of heat pump. They are a heat pump. They call them chillers, but they're a heat pump. And what they're doing is kind of like air conditioning the milk. When milk comes out of a cow, it's hot, the same temperature as the cow. And it needs to be chilled in order for it not to spoil. So they put it in these tanks, and then they run coils of that ether underneath it, the refrigerant, and then you can see the big fan here. Well, someone got the idea of not only are we going to chill the milk, we should put all that heat into a tank of water. And now we have wash down for the barn, and we can get rid of all the poo underneath the cows. We got nice hot water, and it's from their chilled milk. Brilliant. And then someone said, you know what's really good idea? Let's do it for just people's houses. Let's just put a little tiny air conditioner on top of a tank of water, and we'll chill the air coming through, and we'll make the water hot. And that was called Thermistor, and that is our first heat pump water heater that we had in the United States. And we've always had one ever since. People are kind of treating them like a new idea, but they've always been for sale. It's just always been like less than 1% of the market. And things really changed in 2009. We might all remember the first computer that we purchased for ourselves. Sometime in the 1990s or 2000s, you got a personal computer. And in 2009, all the heat pumps got their personal computer, because that's about when the computers got small and people started having smartphones. So this thing is about as fancy as a calculator, not a smartphone, just a calculator. And the computer's job is to say, what's the temperature outside and what's the temperature inside that you're asking for? All right, now I am going to use a computer and run the fan at the right speed. And we're going to run the compressor at the right rate in order to get you the most efficient possible performance. It was the difference between having a 1-speed bicycle with a banana seat, like what I grew up bicycling around, and having like a 30-speed bicycle to go up and down mountains. And the mountains in this case are now the computer will run the fan and the compressor really fast so that at -30 Fahrenheit, you can still heat your house. And in the summertime, when it gets to be 110 out and 115 and 120, instead of having, once again, a single speed old-fashioned heat pump, you get one with a computer, and it will run the fan and the compressor really fast to keep your house cool. It does both. And so the old-fashioned single speed and dual speed or dual gear, which is literally just a gear, those you can still buy, but why would you? All you have to do is get a little tiny computer put in it, and all of a sudden you have a heat pump that works to the coldest temperatures and the hottest temperatures. And you'd say, is it more money? Yeah, it's a little bit more money, but it's worth it because you get it's worth it for so many different reasons. It's also a lot quieter. And how much more money? It's about 10 to 15% more expensive on your installed cost at the end of the day. However, getting the ones with the computers in them also usually qualifies you for any rebates, tax credits, etc. So it's once again also worth it in the sense, in the end, it's a lower cost product if you go get those rebates, but it's definitely lower cost to operate for air conditioning in the summer, lower cost to operate in the wintertime. It's a quick payoff investment. Now, you might be wondering where have people been installing heat pumps forever? And that is in the green states. And in California, we were installing heat pumps up until the oil embargo of 1973, and then the Iran hostage crisis of 79. California went a different direction. But everyone else, including Texas, we've been installing heat pumps without computers in them, which work down to about 35 degrees Fahrenheit. So not great, but it doesn't get that cold in the southern states. So if they have to use a little bit of electric resistance to do heating in the wintertime, that's the cheap way to build. It's the low cost way to build. You build a whole house with electricity to every single appliance, and then you also add gas, and you also buy a slightly more expensive appliance. The gas appliances, be it a stove or a dryer or a furnace or a water heater, are always more expensive than the electric alternative, and always have been. So the smart money has been on building all electric or mostly electric. It's changing now because policies are changing. And also with the advent of computers in heat pumps, the northern states like Wisconsin, we can use heat pumps in the wintertime, air source heat pumps. Air source heat pumps means it's a fan blowing air, right? Ground source heat pumps, where people put tubes into the ground, or water source heat pumps, like my best friend, he had a pond in his backyard. His dad is wealthy. Great. So they had a loop underneath the pond, and they were pulling heat in the wintertime to heat the house from that loop underneath the pond. That's called a water source heat pump. Over in Switzerland, they use moats around old castles, and they literally will pull heat for municipal buildings through water source heat pumps. But air source heat pumps work everywhere on this map. The only place they stop working well is central Alaska. That's where it gets colder than -30 Fahrenheit. One of the questions about is what is the source of the electricity? Now, I've mentioned before that most of the heat pump's energy is from the ambient air, right? 1 unit of electricity collects 2 or 3 or 4 units of energy from the air. So you already are using a renewable energy resource. 1 unit of electricity, 2, 3, 4 units of extra heat coming in. So you beat fossil fuels, even if you had a 100% coal grid in West Virginia. Running heat pumps there uses less total energy because you're collecting so much from the air, from the environment, that's less air pollution as if you use a heat pump on that grid. But this is a picture of today's new grid. What was built this year or is about to be built is 96% clean energy. Now, the stuff from the 1950s is still around. That's nuclear here, and 2%, pardon me. So there was a nuclear power plant that opened in Georgia this year. There have been 4% of our new capacity has been gas, and everything else, 13% wind, 23% batteries, to then firm up the solar. So you offer the solar electricity in the evening. So we're at 96% clean energy this year in all of the power plants being built in our country. And they're retiring coal plants faster, like no one's building coal. And they're retiring gas power plants faster than them being built. We are shifting rapidly away from having a fossil fuel grid. But even if it was all fossil fuel, just using a heat pump with a computer in it, an air source heat pump is less total air pollution and energy being used. Look, here's the good news, is that in 2022, for the first time, we weren't just neck and neck selling gas furnaces and heat pumps for space heating. Now we're ahead. So 2022 and 2023, and this is a global phenomenon. I could show you graphs for the rest of our time together, how every country in the world is stopping selling gas furnaces and they're adopting heat pumps. And I mean, China, of course, and India, and all over Europe, or just call it Eurasia, it's one continent, in cities in Africa. This is how the world is changing and has been changing for a while. To compare the efficiency, I was using words before. It's kind of fun to see a picture. So on the left-hand side, this is gas furnaces in orange. I have the image overlaying it, but you see in orange an 80% efficient. That's the minimum efficiency that you can burn gas at. 97% is the maximum that you can purchase. And just a little window heat pump is 200% efficient, where it's using 1 unit of energy and it's getting another unit of energy. And together it's 200% efficient compared to the best you can get is 97% efficient for gas furnaces. But you can get a good ducted heat pump at 380% efficient, ductless 440%. The best one that they make in Japan is the center of heat pump design and efficiency, 760% efficient. This is using the same testing methods. This is uniform across, apples to apples. I'm trying to be very fair about this. And this is the reality of just gathering energy from the air or from the ground or from underneath the moat. But if you gather the energy using the property of ether boiling at very low temperatures, it'll boil, then that's how you collect the energy from the environment instead of having to burn stuff. Now, some people worry, like, what if we electrify and it harms the grid? And this is actually a funny thing because it's the exact opposite. When you're getting an air conditioner that comes with an efficient heat pump, so you got a heat pump so you could heat in the wintertime, that air conditioner, instead of being a 14 SEER, is an 18 or 19 SEER and can be as high as a 33 SEER or 45 SEER on the ductless mini splits. No one has an air conditioner that is even an 18 or 19 SEER air conditioner. But as soon as you buy a heat pump to heat your house, that's what it comes with automatically, which is why this is the real world. In orange is the peak on the grid in California's SMUD territory, Sacramento. Very hot in the summertime, 110 plus degrees days at a time. So their peak on their grid is driven by air conditioning loads, everyone turning on their air conditioners. In gray, that's the peak on these 700 houses they studied that they put heat pumps in. And the new air conditioning, the new whole house peak dropped dramatically from 3.9 kW as their average peak to 3.4 at the same hour in the evening, like 5, 6 o'clock in the evening. Everyone turns on their air conditioner. It's the peak moment. Now, this blue line here is a new line. That's the peak in the wintertime, which is at 3.3 kW. Remember, the new air conditioning peak in the summer is 3.4, and it was 3.9 before. So that means the winter peak is smaller than the summer peak, even after you've electrified. And that's my point, is that when you put a heat pump in for space heating, you also solve the real grid problem, which is summer peaks. And you don't make a big problem in the wintertime. You make a problem, it is a new peak, but it's smaller than what the grid was designed for. It's smaller than what the wires and the transformers and the substations, all those things, they're designed for a certain amount of electricity to flow through before they get too hot. And you've made a peak in the winter that's smaller than the summer peak. So all of that infrastructure is safe. and you've made it better in the summertime, less blackouts. So here's some examples. This is low-income tribal senior housing that I supported at the Hoopa Reservation. The state of California, which only made it criminal to enslave Indians in 1934, right? They were the last state in the United States to give citizenship, and they did it reluctantly, and they didn't allow Indians to vote until the 60s. And so this project was the first time the state used its money that it had since the 80s, the first time that ever funded tribal housing. So 12 people got to move out of trailers and into low-income single-family homes, nice little homes where you could have your kid live with you if you had if you're getting older. The only way the project got funded is if we put the solar on the roof so we could lower the utility bills. And if we hadn't made it all electric, everyone here would be on propane, which is the most expensive energy you can purchase. It is always less expensive to go from propane to electric heat pumps. So a $12,000 ducted heat pump, that's the whole installed cost. And then the whole installed cost, $3,500 for this heat pump water heater right here, little air conditioner on the top of a tank of water. And that's the Trinity River Elder Village. It's right next to the Trinity River up here in the mountains, the Hoopa Reservation. Oops. So that type of heat pump, a ducted heat pump, it looks exactly like an air conditioner. So this is a Goodman air conditioner on the left, and this is a Goodman heat pump on the right. And these are actual pictures of the actual devices because they're the same. I did go to 2 different advertisements, but they are the same thing. So if you have an air conditioner, you can always just put a heat pump where it is, where that air conditioner is, and call it good. And generally, you don't want or need more than a 3-ton heat pump unless you have a very big house. A lot of people get sold 4-ton and 5-ton heat pumps, and that's wrong. You should be getting a nice computer heat pump that works at cold temperatures and and at hot temperatures. That's what you want, like a nice, durable, smart heat pump. And in that case, you generally don't need more than 3 tons ever. So just want to put that out there. Once you get past 3 tons, then the installers want to also put in new ductwork because a 4-ton heat pump needs bigger ductwork. And they get you on a rope. They're like, and you're going to need maybe a service upgrade, more power, and maybe this and that. I'm trying to tell you, you don't need more than a 3-ton heat pump. And you can figure that out through looking at your gas bills. I can help you if you guys have an email. You can email me and I can try to answer some of your questions for free, just to be friendly, right? And the book that I told you about at the beginning on the first page, that talks a lot about how to do this as well. So down here on the bottom, these are just common brands: York, Goodman, Daikin, Carrier. There are many other brands. These are ones that are good brands. And here's another example. Now I'm going to talk about ductless mini splits, which is a little bit different product. So these houses, these are 26 homes. I mentioned it was the low-income senior housing. It was the first successful subdivision, so to speak, of a group of houses that were all producing more electricity in a year than they consumed. Net positive. Everyone here has negative utility bills. They get paid checks of $20 to $200 a year for not consuming so much electricity. Very successful project. So what they're using to heat and cool these very well insulated homes, brand new, are ductless mini splits. So let's break this down. Ductless means they've got this wall-mounted cassette. And what that is inside of it is that fan. I've told you there's always a fan inside that's blowing air, either to collect the heat in the summertime or to blow heat in the wintertime. So instead of this being connected to ductwork up in your attic or below your house, it just sits on the wall and it just blows air directly into the room. Doesn't go through registers and ductwork. You have to keep in mind, in the old days when we're burning coal and then we're burning gas, you generally want to do it in one place and then blow the air elsewhere. New products, the new way of doing it is you deliver a little tiny tube of refrigerant, the ether. You deliver that little tiny tube to a box on the wall and you save energy. You don't, like, there's a lot of fan energy blowing air through ductwork, which has got a lot of friction in it. So ductless mini splits save energy, and these are the highest efficiency heat pumps for sale. So they're also quiet, nearly silent. Everyone here, I mean, if you have tinnitus, for instance, like my mom does, she has a ductless mini split. It makes no noise ever at all. You cannot hear it. You're right next to it. You just cannot hear noise. Very pleasant. So heat pump water heater, this is just a different brand, but this is what the ductless mini splits look like. And they're interesting. The mini split part of it, it seems to refer to the fact they flip the fan on its side. Over in Eurasia, it's much more common to have the fan on its side. And in North America, we put the fan like pointing up and down as opposed to back and forth. Whatever, it's still this big old fan. That's the only important thing to say. It's a fan inside, and one way or the other. But mini split seems to mean fan on its side. So it's a ductless mini split. Ductless is the important part, that there's a cassette that sits on the wall. Now I'm going to talk about air to water. So this project, I got to win the grand prize from the United Nations. They're like, good job. First time in 10 years we're giving this award to someone from the United States. You solved a problem. Good boy. And I felt very good boy about it. They gave me a gold star. And so we were trying to make the most efficient project we could, and we learned a lesson here. So our first phase, which we got the big award for, we used a heat pump to, fan outside, and we use it to heat water. And then the water, this big old tank of water, which kind of, you can imagine it like this. Here's the heat pump, right? This Daikin heat pump on the outside. And then here's the Daikin tank of water. And this is about as cute as it ever gets, because you can line them up to make them look like a washer and dryer, right? These two things. This is a different product on the right-hand side. I just want to be clear. On the left-hand side, it looks normal with a heat pump on the outside. But the point is that you think that you've simplified your system, because now you put an air source heat pump and you've got water. And you know that you want to have water for showers and things. So why not just make everything water? And then you're going to deliver the water to a fan coil again to have a fan blow the warm air or cold air if it's cold water coming in. Or maybe it goes to like a radiant floor, tubes underneath the cement in your floor. And what we learned is that it's more expensive. It is cheaper to break those two systems apart and heat the air and cool the air with an air-to-air heat pump, and then have an air source heat pump for the water heater. And just to say, it looks like this, right? Here's them split apart. This product is a standalone water heater, and this product is a standalone space heating and cooling system. And what we learned expensively was that it was maybe more efficient on heating, but it accidentally ran all summer long during air conditioning mode. And our air conditioner was just overwhelmed, like all the inefficiencies of running all the time. It was an accident, but that's what I've found, is that every time you combine systems, they have a control thing in the middle that makes accidents happen. And so you start running things at the wrong time and doing it wrong. And so for much less money on phase 2, we split the systems apart, and we functionally got a more efficient water heater, and we got a more efficient air conditioner, and we might have gotten a less efficient space heating system, but we're not exactly sure. But overall, it was less expensive and about the same efficiencies. So that's what I learned, is that this kind of system of air to water, if you want to have a radiant floor, this is the way to do it. If you want to have a radiant floor and have a tank of water for your showers, it's not a cheaper thing to do. You can do it. People like to do it. But I'm not saying it's cheaper. I'm saying it's more expensive. Okay. So now I'm going to show you an example and then a picture of what we did here. So this is the heat pumps we put in. And what's different about these ones, these are called mini splits because the fan is up and down, like I mentioned. But you see on the top, there's this cassette that is supposed to hook up to ductwork. On the left-hand side, you can see how ductwork, kind of small ducts, are hooked up to this system here. And there's a whole bunch of them. So we did that in this apartment complex for low-income families in San Jose. And it worked out pretty well. But note that we have a rooftop solar system. They were hoping to get 100% offset with their roof. And we struggled to do that because we also had to put all these compressors up on the roof, the heat pumps. This box here, that had to go up on the roof. And that took up space for the solar array. So this is what those products look like. You know, I think we use the Mitsubishi on the right-hand side. So up on the roof, there's a whole bunch of these white boxes, the heat pump. And then inside of the apartment, there's a little bit of ductwork hooked up to this fan coil. That's what it looks like. There's ductwork attached to it. And what I learned from this project, which was back in 2017, is that there's still room for lowering costs. Oh, I'm going to show you that in a minute, but I guess I have this in the wrong spot. This is the kind of air to water heat pumps or ground to water. This is on the top, this is ground source heat pumps where you put tubes in the ground. And on the bottom, this is an air source heat pump that does the same thing. Both of these products are heating up water or propylene glycol, but they're heating up a liquid that goes underneath your floor. That's this design of a radiant floor. This is the most expensive way to heat and cool your house. A lot of people like it. It's quiet. It's really nice to have warm toes. But it definitely, if you have a $20,000 heating system with ductwork and such, it turns into a $40,000 to $50,000 heating system and cooling system if you put it in the floor, because you have to pour concrete. You have to layer all these tubes and put all that metal stuff when you put together snip ties, and it takes a ton of labor and materials to lay out this whole grid on the floor. And you really have to put 2 tubes in because one of them is going to leak someday. And are you going to destroy your floor, or are you going to hook up to the second set of tubes that you put in wisely? It just takes a lot of labor, 2 sets of tubes, which is the smart way to do it. Oh my gosh. So, you know, that's a way to blow a whole bunch of money that maybe your grandkids deserve. But if you have it, more power to you. I'm no doubt you have very warm toes. So these ground source heat pumps, they're also great for hot tubs. You can use them for a variety of products. And Robert, how am I doing on time? I'll look here. 10:56. Okay, we're doing okay.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. Yes, you got a few minutes, and then we'll go into breakout groups. Excellent presentation, Sean. Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, so this is the radiators that you use with heat pumps. Usually, because heat pumps generally produce 130-degree water. 140 degrees is getting kind of hot for a heat pump for most of them. You generally put in different radiators if you want radiators, because big old-fashioned radiators don't have much surface area, and so they can't release much heat. But these ones, they're designed to have a lot of surface area, so you can have water go through them at 80 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's kind of like that radiant floor. It's just more or less the temperature that you actually want is all you need if you have a lot of surface area on a radiator. So Yaga is one of them. There's other brands. Now, another example, this is for low-income senior veterans. This is 14 tiny homes that we built. And I want to show you how to do it for lower cost. So each of 7 homes, two rows of 7 tiny homes for these homeless senior veterans, they get 1 water heater that's the big fancy type. If people have like big bathtubs with eggshells, you know, like the big bathtubs, you know what I'm talking about, that might need this kind of water heater, which produces 4 times as much hot water in the moment as standard water heaters I've been showing you, these little tank types. This has a big compressor heat pump outside with a big fan, so it can collect 4 times as much energy as other ones have shown you. That was the cheapest way to do this. We have this one big water heater, which most people would use for bathtubs, and it's for 7 rows of showers. It's perfect. We monitor it. It works perfectly. And we have an efficient, quiet, through-the-wall heat pump. These are the types that you see in hotels. This is a quieter version. It has the computer in it. It makes it a big, important difference. So $2 grand. And that was the least expensive way to build these tiny homes. Now, the fancier version of this $2,000, this just won a bunch of awards, and it's basically it goes down to -10 Fahrenheit. It's got a MERV 13 filter for smoke season in it. It's like caulked and sealed, so it has no leakage around it. It's completely silent. It does de-icing. So this is the fancy version of a pretty inexpensive form factor. cutting a hole in your wall and sticking a heat pump in that you plug in is about as easy as it gets. So just so you know, Efoca is the brand. This is the fancy version of of this LG, which is also a fancy one. Amana is the least expensive, and it's okay, but it has all the issues of no computer, a lot of noise. Medea, this is the best one to put in through your window, I would argue. Medea is like a huge manufacturer in China. And this is a cold climate heat pump. So you can heat and cool with this just for one room at a time, but you can basically close your window down on it and it sits on either side of the window. So just want to know if this is an inexpensive way. Keep in mind that if you put in 3 tons of heating and cooling, I mentioned like a 3-ton heat pump, that's 36,000 BTUs, 12,000 BTUs to a ton. So if you put in a 3-ton heat pump, that's going to cost you $5,000 to $7,000 a ton. So $15,000 to $21,000 for 3 tons. This is like $1,000 and it's 3/4 of a ton. So you have to get 4 of them. So it's $4,000. This is $4,000 of heating and cooling at the same temperatures, quiet, perfect, instead of $15,000 to $21,000. And you just need to have a slider up and down sash window. It might be worth it to put in new windows in order to use this type of heat pump, because it might save you $10,000 or $15,000. You know, that's the cost if you have a crappy old window you always wanted to replace.
Sean,
However,
that might be a good place to just take a pause. How are you doing on time?
well, I've got a couple more slides. Give me a second here because it's some important stuff. You guys took 20 minutes to introduce yourself and do a survey. Let me get my 40 minutes in.
You're right.
Okay, so $700. This is also for 1 ton. It has not a very good window seal, but if you're trying to put in an air conditioner heat pump, Medea, once again, the same manufacturer, the highest quality one in China. You can get this online. You have to get the one that's called the High Efficiency Inverter Ultra Quiet. Ultra Quiet's the word. But then you get this, and it is quiet enough that one of my staff nurses her baby next to it down in a 10-person single-family house in East Los Angeles. Right? This is how she gets through it while still having her mom and her mother-in-law living with her. So these window heat pumps are the cheapest possible way for you to electrify the HVAC in your house. Now, the water heaters I've showed you, there's ones out there that are 120 volt that you can plug in easily without having to rewire, and that's what I recommend. This is A.O. Smith, this is Rheem. These use very little power. 100 amps is all you ever need. So if some electrician is telling you you need more, they're wrong. You go out and you get the right products like this 120 volt, 500 watt, very energy efficient, does all the work that you need, up to 7 people. And here the Sanco, this is what does water heating for bigger homes, big demands. I'll skip past this. This is apartment complex stuff, but there's big heat pumps for water heating for apartment complexes if you got like a condo association or something. Once again, big heat pump water heaters for condos, for like, a Hawaii condo association that's running on propane now, they should get an electric heat pump. I was supposed to get also to dryers. So laundry dryers, this uses 1/3 the electricity of a standard electric resistance. And they're using heat pumps, the technology I told you before of how they'll pull heat out. In this case, they'll be pulling some of the heat out of your residence. Not much, but a little bit. It might cool off the laundry room instead of heating it up. And the best one is on the right-hand side, I think, because you put in dirty laundry and 2 hours later, it comes out clean and dry. It's one machine. So it's a heat pump washer dryer, and Samsung, LG, and GE are all making them. And I love it. I mean, it starts fights in my house to have 2 machines and forwarding the laundry from one to the other. And I love having one machine, which is what we have now. And ironically, we still have fights because some people love the washing machine function of it, and they want to put it into the faster electric resistance dryer, and then transferring it becomes a fight again. And it's like, will you just push the button and just make it so we don't have to argue about transferring laundry? Here's the heat pump for swimming pools. A senior friend of mine, he invites my kids over, and they're using a heat pump to heat the swimming pool, including in the winter, like AquaCal's Icebreaker. This is a place in upstate New York that's using heat pumps, air source heat pumps in the wintertime to heat the outside swimming pools and hot tubs. So I want to make sure this is for all climates except Central Canada and Central Alaska. This is the one for Olympic-sized swimming pools, the Great Big Bopper. You guys all probably remember the Great Big Bopper. So, well, he married like a 14-year-old. In retrospect, some of those movie stars from the 50s are making questionable choices. So, illegal choices. How about that word? So anyway, here we have this gigantic swimming pool. And then the last one, hey, look at this, Inflation Reduction Act, sort of bipartisan. And the thing to know is that basically installing your heat pumps, you can get a tax credit for $2,000 a year for the heat pumps. $3,200 is if you do other things, weatherization, energy audits and such, but it's $2,000 a year, and the credit limit resets every year. So you can get a $2,000 credit for your heat pump water heater this year and a $2,000 credit for your heat pump space heating system next year. And that is all of my slide deck. Thank you, Robert, for letting me get through that.
That was a great presentation. You know, when you said that, I remember when my wife and I got married many years ago, all we had to do was call up the gas company or the electric company and said, please turn on electricity. That was it. That was our only extent. That's all we ever knew about electricity. Now we know so much more in order to save the planet and in order to get the best thing. You've helped us a lot in doing that, Sean. I very much appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So now we're going to breakout groups, and I put the questions in the chat. I think I put them in the chat. I'm smart here. There you go.
Now come around, like ask me your questions as soon as we get in there.
You're gonna move around it from room to room. So Jen, go ahead and put us in the breakout groups and for about, how about 17 minutes?
Okay, 17 minutes.
I'll give Sean time to come back and answer some more questions.
All right, Sean, you are starting off in a room. I'm not exactly sure which room I put you in, but so go in there for a little bit and you can come back and I'll move you to a new one.
How do I
everybody,
go there?
Go ahead. I'm going to open the rooms in just a second.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So I'm going to open the rooms in just a second. You're going to get a little invitation that pops up and asks you to join a room. So go ahead and click and join. If you have any problems, let me know.
Mike Allen in Oregon, what was the #1 question you came up in your session?
No, one of them is avoiding bad advice came forward, and how do you get good advice on so that you don't get rooked? And Sean, you addressed that. That came up quite a few times.
Right, and that was similar to our how to find a good installer was frequently raised in our, how do you know who to trust? Well,
air conditioner installers already install heat pumps. So going to someone who specializes in air conditioning is a good start. Who specializes in gas furnaces is like good at running gas lines and good at gas combustion and gas. So start with the air conditioner installers and then get 3 bids. So I was a professional, right? And professionals, we know that we can save 20-30% of the money and get someone who gives good advice in the process, because each contractor has a different opinion of what they want you to do. And at the end of the day, you can do 2 things, which is say, I don't want you contractor that I like, I don't want you to do the thing that you said you wanted to do. I want you to do the thing this other contractor is willing to do, but I want you to do it. And you get those options when you have 3 bids. And so if you consider yourself like, I'm paying myself $5,000 to $10,000 for my time and to go out and call and get someone to come over here and give a bid. And you walk in the door saying, I want a heat pump. Just so we're clear, I'm not interested in you trying to sell me a gas furnace or a heat pump with a gas furnace that's added to it. Like, you have to have a little bit of spine, because the contractors, what they want to do is upsell, and they want to sell you the thing they like to sell. And so you have to come in with like knowing what you want. You want a heat pump, you want a cold climate. This is for HVAC specifically, for heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. If you're heating and cooling your house, which is the most expensive heat pump, you're going to spend $10,000 to $25,000 for most of the heat pump installations out there for space heating. Your water heater, that's like $4,000 to $6,000. Your dryer, your heat pump dryer, that's like $1,000 to $2,000. And you can see that you can do your water heater and your dryer for half as much money as what you're going to spend on the HVAC. So don't mess around with the HVAC, get 3 bids, figure out what people are saying to you and say, I want a cold climate heat pump. That's what I want. and you say cold climate, so they don't give you an electric resistance backup one, like a single speed, no computer in it. That's the old school cheap stuff, and it's a waste of money, really. And it doesn't get you incentives and all the rest of it. It's not Energy Star. You might say that. This might be the simple thing. You say, hey, I want an Energy Star heat pump. I want one that works in the wintertime for cold climates. And they'll just be like, okay.
Sean, I have a really important question. It's almost 11:30. Can you stay on?
I can do one more question. I've skipped a whole bunch of other meetings I'm supposed to do today because I my favorite thing, but I shouldn't skip any more.
Okay, Blank, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. We were really fascinated by the little window, $1,000 window unit you showed.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you just put one in every room of the house and not put a central heat pump in?
Why wouldn't you, really? I agree. Because one of the reasons that this is new, like this is a new strategy. I've been involved in the making of this, and so the New York State government had to fund competitions to get this to exist, and now I'm grant funded to install them. And it's a brilliant idea if you have a sash window, an up and down window. Lots of people have slider windows. Lots of people have casement windows that go out. So this is a perfect solution for some people, unless you replace your windows. But then at that point, like, yeah, go for it. This thing is designed for upstate New York. It's designed for cold weather. And it's made by a really big manufacturer in China, which is all the good news. Because China is the world's center for manufacturing. Japan is where it's designed. America almost doesn't even care about heat pumps until recently, and the rest of the world has been going strong on them, and we're just catching on.
Well, thank you, Sean, so very much for a fantastic presentation. We learned so much, and we will be sending out all the information that came out today, including from the breakout rooms, the chat, and everything else, as well as the presentation.
Yeah, I'll send you the slides in just a moment. I was updating them to the last minute, so I'll send you the current ones.
We knew that. That's good. Good for you, because it changes so much.
I care about you all. I'm trying to make this your presentation, just to be clear. There's multiple new things I put in just to make sure it can make the point right.
It was a wonderful presentation, really. Thanks.
Oh,
Yeah.
you're welcome.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Well, you're welcome to reach out via email. Give me a week or more to respond, since I have to do normal work and I run a company. But I would love to help you out with some of your problems. So you can send out my contact information, Robert, if you wish.
We're going to do that. We're going to send the slides. We're going to send everything out to everybody on this call. So thank you also very much. That concludes.
Take care.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Great job.